All right, next on the docket are disclosures of, these are disclosures of brokerage relationships, okay? So if for some reason you're in a transaction and you are going to say sell your own listing to a buyer who is unrepresented, you will need this disclosure for unrepresented parties. This discloses to the buyer that you represent the seller. Now, it can also go the other way, right? It's a FSBO. You represent the buyer, and you're writing an offer on a FSBO, and you're sending this in with your contract to inform the seller, FSBO owner, that you represent only the buyer in this transaction. It's a mandatory disclosure you're required to make. So you'd fill out the top part, the broker or the salesperson, whatever your name is, and then whatever the firm name is, so Sampson Properties, SAMSON, and then whatever the property address is for this disclosure. And then you would check whoever it is that you're representing. So if you're representing the buyer, it's letting the seller know that you only represent the buyer. So the seller needs to sign this. If you're sending this over to, if you represent the seller and you're disclosing to the buyer that you only represent the seller, then the buyer needs to sign this. Question.
So I think this is a question from the previous form, but what happens if buyer signs the agreement, then goes and signs another agreement with a different agent?
Right. Well, that buyer could be on the hook for, if they ratified a contract, that buyer could be on the hook to pay 2 compensations. So if you have a buyer agency agreement with a buyer and then later on find out that they ratified a contract on a property to say you showed, and they entered into another buyer agency agreement, then you would have leverage in order to go after that buyer for whatever you said in here under your agreement that you were due compensation. So if your agreement says that you're due, 2.5% or per the MRIS, then you're covered for 2.5% or whatever they paid through the MRIS. So if that ever happens, I would recommend that you give a call to one of the brokers, i.e. Mike Briggs, and chat with him regarding what your situation is, and he should be able to let you know what your recourse could be.